I told myself it didn't matter. That the day would come and go like any other day, with or without the bow-tied boxes I'd seen in the movies, the ones tied up with so much care you almost didn't want to untie them. It was our anniversary, 5 years married, 8 years together if you counted all the mess that came before the vows. I counted every moment. He said he didn't believe in counting, that every day should feel special. That's what he'd told me last year too, when he showed up late with takeout instead of flowers. This year, I woke up early. I made us coffee, just the way he liked it, dark, 2 sugars, cream swirled in after, not before. I slipped the card I'd bought him onto his side of the table. It wasn't much, just something small with a handwritten note inside, reminding him of the promises we'd whispered when no one was listening. For better, for worse. For as long as we keep choosing each other. He came down the stairs, phone in hand, half distracted by something on the screen. He kissed the top of my head, quick and careless, the way you'd pet a dog that was always underfoot. He saw the card but didn't open it right away. Just tapped it twice with his finger like he was making sure it was real. I asked him if he wanted breakfast. He said he didn't have time. He was late for work. I didn't ask about dinner. I didn't want him to lie to my face. Before he left, I asked him, just to see what he'd say. Did you forget what day it is? He turned in the doorway, sighing like he'd been holding his breath all morning. Money's tight, babe. You know that. We talked about this. I nodded. Of course, we'd talked about it. The savings account was thin, the credit card a little too close to the limit. He always reminded me how much things cost, how expensive life was when you were the only one trying. I made my small paycheck stretch. I skipped haircuts, skipped lunch with coworkers, skipped the shoes I needed when the soles wore down to nothing. It was fine. It was all for us. So I told him it was okay. That we'd do something next year. That what mattered was we were still here, together. He kissed me again, told me I was good to him. I watched him pull out of the driveway in his car, an old one, sure, but reliable enough. I stood there long after the engine noise faded, clutching my coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping my hands steady. That night, I sat by myself at the dining table. Cold pasta on the plate. The card still unopened where he'd left it. I told myself it didn't matter. He'd come around. He'd bring me something small tomorrow, flowers from the gas station, maybe, or a slice of cake from the grocery store bakery. Something to prove he hadn't really forgotten. But I found the receipt the next day. It was wedged under the seat of his car when I was cleaning out the old fast food wrappers he always left behind. A dealership logo at the top, the date printed in neat black ink, our anniversary. A car, paid in full. A brand new sedan, sleek and silver. Registered in his mother's name. I read the numbers twice, then 3 times, my eyes tracing the shape of each digit like I might have misread it if I squinted just right. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, keys in my lap, the smell of his cologne clinging to the seatbelt I hadn't unbuckled yet. My reflection in the rearview mirror didn't look shocked. Just tired. A gift I never got. A car she didn't even need. An anniversary I'd spent telling myself that love wasn't about the gifts. That maybe, if I waited long enough, I'd feel like enough too. But that receipt said it clearer than he ever did. He always had enough. Just not for me. I wish I could say that receipt was the first time I felt the sting, the first time it truly dawned on me that his words never matched his hands, that his promises were paper-thin in the places that counted most. But the truth is, when I held that slip of paper in my shaking fingers, it felt less like a revelation and more like a confirmation of something I'd buried so deep it almost felt like loyalty. I used to tell my friends he was generous in his own way. I said it so many times that it almost sounded true. In the beginning, I'd brush off the way he'd forget a birthday until the last minute, running out for flowers half-wilted from the corner store. The first Christmas together, he bought me a single candle from a clearance bin, still with the markdown sticker stuck to the side. Money's tight, babe. We'll do better next year. He'd say it with that sheepish grin, that hand behind my neck, pulling me in for a kiss so I'd forget what I'd hoped for. Every year, it was the same. Money for what mattered, he said. Rent, groceries, bills. His mother's cable package, her new washing machine, the little weekend getaways she needed to relax. There was always some reason she needed more. She was lonely, he'd say. She sacrificed everything for me. I'd nod. Of course she did. I'd met her once, just once, when she'd bragged about the school she'd paid for, the way she'd pushed him to do better, to never settle. I believed her then. I wanted to believe him too. But over time, the excuses got sharper. I stopped asking for things that felt extra, no more little surprises, no soft boxes tied with ribbon. I stopped hinting at the necklace I'd loved in that thrift store window, the one that cost less than his mother's monthly cable bill. I didn't plan birthday dinners because he'd always cancel at the last minute. Mom needs me. I'll make it up to you. He never did. When I look back now, I see how many times I tried to fill the empty spaces with my own hands. I'd bake his favorite cake, even though he never ate more than one slice. I'd hang up little notes on the bathroom mirror, reminders of what I loved about him, hoping he'd leave one for me too. He never did. But he'd always tell me I was sweet for trying, and I clung to that word like it was proof that trying mattered. It was my mother who told me once, in that quiet, worried voice she uses when she knows she can't say too much, love shouldn't always feel like you're earning it. I laughed it off then. Told her she didn't understand. That some people show love in different ways. That he was under so much pressure. That I was proud to stand beside him while he did so much for everyone else. But sitting there in his car, the receipt a ghost on the passenger seat beside me, I saw every excuse lined up like a trail of breadcrumbs I'd ignored. Holidays missed. Vacations postponed. Promises pushed off like old bills that never got paid. His mother's voice in his ear, always reminding him that he deserved more, that she deserved everything. And me watching, nodding, telling myself that if I was good enough, patient enough, he'd remember that I deserved something too. I don't know how long I sat there, the car quiet except for the soft tick of the cooling engine. Long enough for the sun to dip behind the neighbor's house, long enough for the shadows to creep over my face in the rearview mirror. I looked at myself, at the woman who'd given him every last good piece of herself, waiting for scraps in return. I picked up the receipt and slipped it into my purse. Not to confront him yet, no, not yet. But to keep as proof. A reminder that the next time he said, "Money's tight, babe," I'd have something real to hold on to. Something that said the truth out loud, clearer than he ever would. I kept the receipt tucked in my wallet for 3 days. It sat between my grocery list and the faded photo booth strip we'd taken years ago when he'd said we were unbreakable. I'd open my wallet to buy milk and see it there, crisp, unforgiving, a reminder that the only thing fragile here was me. I could have stormed into the living room the minute I found it, waved it in his face, demanded an apology big enough to cover every gift he'd promised but never brought home. But that's not who I was. Not yet. Instead, I waited. Watched. Let him come home late again with excuses about work drinks and mom needed a ride when the ink on the dealership contract told me exactly who got the ride. The night I finally said something, I didn't plan it. We were eating leftovers at the kitchen table, his phone propped against the salt shaker, scrolling through videos, half listening to me talk about my day. He laughed at something on the screen. I watched the light from the video flicker across his face like a fire I didn't feel the warmth of anymore. I asked him, casual as I could, "Did you really mean it when you said you couldn't afford anything for our anniversary?" He barely looked up. "Babe, we've been through this. Money's tight." My hand was in my lap, thumb brushing over the folded edge of that receipt until it felt soft as old paper. I slipped it onto the table, right on top of his phone. He flinched, annoyed at the interruption, until his eyes landed on the dealership logo in bold letters, the total circled in blue ink, the date, our date, staring back at him like an accusation. He didn't say anything at first. Just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. That smug half-smile crept across his lips, the one he used when he knew he was cornered but thought he could talk his way out of it. "What's this?" he asked, like he hadn't read every line already. "You tell me," I said, and my voice didn't even shake. "You couldn't buy me a single flower, but you bought her a car?" He snorted. Snorted. Like it was a joke only he was smart enough to understand. "Oh, come on. You're not actually mad about that, are you?" She needed it. Her old one was falling apart. I didn't blink. And what did I need? He didn't answer that. Just threw his hands up like he was exhausted by my stubbornness. "You don't get it. She's my mother. She sacrificed everything for me. I owe her. Besides, you have everything you need. You've got a roof, food, me." Me. Like he was the greatest gift I could ever hope for. I felt something sharp uncoil in my chest then, not just anger, but something deeper. Recognition. The way he said "you have everything you need" made it clear. I was never going to be more than the afterthought, the leftover kindness he handed out when it didn't cost him too much. "Do you know what I wanted?" I asked him, voice soft, calm, a tone he'd never heard from me before. "I wanted to feel like I mattered as much as she does. That's all." He laughed, like that was the most unreasonable thing he'd ever heard. "It's just money. Why do you make such a big deal out of it? Don't be dramatic." He shoved the receipt back across the table, like it was a bill he didn't want to pay. Picked up his phone again, eyes already drifting back to the glow of the screen. The conversation was over, in his mind. But for me, it was just beginning. I looked at the receipt one last time before sliding it back into my wallet. Proof that I'd asked for so little and gotten less than nothing. Proof that no matter how many times he told me money's tight, he always found a way to spend it where he wanted. And it was never on me. The thing about the worst betrayals is they rarely show up all at once. They don't arrive at your door with a neon sign that says "this is where it all goes wrong." They come in whispers, in small shrugs, in moments so easy to excuse you almost feel guilty for noticing. I sat up that night after he fell asleep on the couch, the TV still flickering shadows across his face while he snored, oblivious to the tight knot in my chest. I poured myself a cup of tea I didn't really want and stood by the window, looking out at our driveway. Her new car wasn't there, it was at her house, parked like a crown on her front lawn, a silent reminder of who he'd always choose first. I thought back to when we first started dating. Back then, his mother was just a voice on the phone, a chirpy, sweet tone that asked how I was doing, how school was going, did I have dinner ready for her son. I'd giggle to my friends about it. "She's just protective. It's cute, right?" They'd exchange looks behind my back that I didn't want to understand. I should have understood it the first time he canceled our dinner because she'd called crying about a leaking faucet. It was our 6-month anniversary, the first time I'd ever booked a restaurant that needed a reservation. I sat there alone for 20 minutes before the hostess finally said, Ma'am, I'm sorry. Do you want to give up your table?" I texted him, told him it was fine. He said, "I'll make it up to you, babe." When we got engaged, she stood next to me in the bridal shop, fingering the edge of the dress I'd fallen in love with. "It's beautiful," she'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But when we stepped away from the mirror, her voice dropped to a hiss. "You know he can't afford this, right? Don't bury him in debt for one night." I told myself she was practical, just worried about him. I told myself that again when he backed out of helping me pay for half the dress, saying, "Mom's right. We'll have our whole lives for things like this." Our honeymoon was a weekend at a cheap cabin because Mom needed the car for her doctor's appointments. Christmases were always spent at her house, me helping her cook while they sat on the couch together. Once, I found a receipt for a diamond bracelet. He'd told me money was too tight for presents that year. I never got that bracelet. I still don't know if she wears it. When I tried to talk about it with friends, they'd tilt their heads and say things like, "That's just how some men are. It's sweet how he takes care of her." And I'd nod, smile, tuck the truth deeper down. It must be sweet, I told myself, to be loved like that. To be someone's first thought. I believed that if I kept giving, kept being the cool wife who never made a fuss, maybe one day I'd earn my place beside her in his heart. But standing there by the window, steam from my mug rising like a ghost, I realized it was never about earning anything. It was about who he wanted to hold space for. And it was never me. He mumbled my name in his sleep, like an apology that didn't cost him anything. I watched him for a long moment, really looked at him, his face soft and innocent in the dark, like a boy who'd never grown out of needing his mother's arms more than mine. I thought about all the years I'd spent making myself small, so they'd have more room to take. How every promise he'd made to make it up to me always ended up in her driveway instead. And for the first time, I felt it, an ache, yes, but also a spark. The spark of knowing I didn't want to stand here at this window a year from now, 5 years from now, watching someone else's car gleam in the sun while I told myself to be grateful for leftovers. No more waiting for scraps. No more telling myself that someday he'd remember who built this life with him. It didn't happen overnight, and maybe that's what made it real. The shift wasn't some dramatic slam of the door or screaming match under the neighbor's windows. It was quiet. It was me, standing at the edge of my own life, realizing I could just step back in. I started small, the way you do when you're learning to walk on your own feet again. I opened a separate account at the little credit union near my job, one of those things I'd told myself I didn't need because what's mine is yours. He always said that when he needed to justify why my paychecks disappeared into bills with his name on them, why I never saw the statements with my own eyes. I'd believed him. God, I'd wanted to believe him. I took overtime shifts when I could. Said yes when coworkers asked if I wanted to split rides to save on gas, pocketing the difference instead. I stopped buying him the little nice things I used to pick up just because, his favorite snacks, the shirt I knew he'd like. I figured if I was already invisible, I'd make it work for me for once. The strange thing was, he didn't notice. He didn't notice when I switched my direct deposit. Didn't notice when I started coming home a little later, the excuse of work an easy one he'd long trained me to use. He didn't ask what I was saving for. He didn't ask because he didn't care to know. Or maybe because he just assumed whatever I had would always be his to claim. His mother didn't notice either. She still called every night around dinner, the same sing-song voice asking what he wanted to eat, what errands she needed him to run for her. I'd listen from the kitchen while I made myself a sandwich, half a world away from their bubble of us two against the world. The words used to make me flinch. Now they made me feel oddly free. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not at first. Some secrets need to grow inside you like a pearl, layer after layer protecting the softest part. I'd catch myself daydreaming while folding laundry, picturing a little apartment with just my name on the lease, a key that opened a door only I could walk through. No one else's fingerprints on the handle. No one else's voice telling me I was asking for too much. Sometimes I wondered what he'd do when he realized I'd stopped playing the game. That I'd stopped twisting myself up into knots just to be what they needed. Would he even care? Would she? It's funny how life gives you moments to test your resolve. One morning, he asked if I'd help him chip in for something, new tires for her car. The one he'd bought her on our anniversary. He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, like it was obvious I'd say yes because we take care of family. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, money's tight." I watched his eyebrows twitch, just for a second, before he shrugged it off and called her instead. Later that night, I lay awake in bed while he snored beside me, his phone lighting up every so often with her messages. I thought about how easy it was for him to sleep through this life we'd built on my sacrifices. I thought about how he'd roll over in the morning and kiss my cheek like nothing was missing. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. Ready to stop being the girl who waited for a gift that would never come. Ready to give myself the only thing he never would. A choice. The morning I left, there was no shouting. No broken plates or slammed doors. No neighbors peeking through the blinds, waiting to see who would walk away first. I think that's the part that surprises people the most when I tell it, how calm it was, how small. It was just me, standing at the foot of our bed while he slept like a man with nothing to lose. The sun was creeping through the gap in the curtains, soft stripes of light falling across his face. I wondered if he'd wake up when he felt the emptiness next to him. Or if he'd just roll over and blame it on me the way he always did. You're always so dramatic. You make everything a problem. I'd been up for hours already, my bag zipped shut at the door. The keys to my new car, a second-hand little thing, but it was mine, sat in my jacket pocket, warm from the heat of my palm. I'd signed the papers the day before, my name the only one on the title. I held that slip of paper like it was proof that I existed outside of him. Outside of her. I glanced around the room one last time. The photo on his nightstand, us at the fair when we were 20, both of us grinning like we had the whole world ahead of us. Back then, he'd won me a cheap stuffed bear at one of those rigged games. I'd held on to that bear for years, a symbol of a promise I thought would grow into something real. I left the bear on his pillow. Let him keep that version of us if he wanted. It didn't fit in my bag anymore. When he stirred, I didn't freeze. I didn't wait for him to open his eyes and spit out another excuse, another empty apology. I stepped closer, just enough so I could see the crease between his brows, the lines that had deepened over years of blaming everyone else for choices that were always his. I wanted to say I forgave him. But that would have been a lie. I didn't forgive him yet. Maybe I never would. But I did forgive myself, for every time I made myself small so he could feel big, for every birthday I told myself didn't matter, for every receipt I'd hidden under the mattress of my heart just to keep the illusion warm. I walked to the kitchen and left the spare keys to the house on the counter. Next to them, I placed the receipt, the car, the date, the final proof that I wasn't imagining the way he'd shown me exactly where I stood. I imagined him finding it later, hearing his mother's voice in his ear telling him what a selfish little girl I'd always been. Maybe he'd believe her. Maybe that's easier for him than believing the truth. The truth is, there was always enough. Just not for me. I stepped outside, my breath fogging in the early morning chill. My little car sat in the driveway, dull blue paint and a backseat empty of old excuses. I slid into the driver's seat, my hands trembling just a little on the wheel. Not from fear, but from the weight lifting off my chest for the first time in years. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror once, just once. The house was still. The curtains still half drawn. His mother's new car gleamed where it sat in the garage, untouched, perfect, everything she'd ever wanted for herself. I didn't feel the sting I thought I would. Just a strange, deep quiet in my bones. Like the silence of a house you know you're never going to see again. At the first stoplight, I let myself smile. Small at first, then bigger. It wasn't about revenge or making him regret it or waiting for him to run after me. It was about the gift he'd never give. The one I was finally willing to give myself. A chance to belong only to me. My hands steady on the wheel. My name on the title. My life, bought back mile by mile. My own gift. And it was more than enough.